World War II. We've all heard about this great war, about the heroes and the struggles countries and religious groups faced. Every year we hear of the horror and the devastation it brought to the world. Well, this is a very different story, one with a completely different perspective that we don't get to see or hear of very often. This is mainly about my grandma, and is her story of what she went through and her understanding of the war as a child. Grandma will be turning 80 this August, making her 3 years old when the war started. She lived with her mother and father. Her father worked in an aircraft factory called Nustep-Final-Evacuaton, so he did not go away to fight in the war. He was in the reserved occupation, so he joined the Home Guard. Fortunately, it did not hit close to home, but for her best friend, her father left her and never came back. This occurred to many children and many wives. War, man, weapons, take lives. The short backstory you need to know is that World War II was a developing war. After the First Great War, as the negotiations of surrender were not suitable for future peace, France, and the USSR. After a bit of tension for many years, the spark of the war was the assassination of the Archduke, and World War II began. 1941, my grandmother was off to school. She took a gas mask with her and had to practice putting it on daily, also going to large air raid shelters in the school grounds. As she was so young, the routine of practicing how to put on a gas mask and how to quickly lift chemical weapons had been frequently used during World War I, and many soldiers had died or been injured in gas attacks. Mustard gas was the most deadly of all the poisonous chemicals used. There was a real fear that it would be used against civilians in Britain. Heavy and frequent bombing attacks on British cities were known as the Blitz. At 4:56 p.m. on 7th September 1940, the air raid sirens wailed at German Air Force. The Luftwaffe launched a massive airstrike on London. Over 350 bombers flew across the Channel from airfields in France and dropped 300 tons of bombs on docks and streets at the East End of London. The shelters were half buried in the ground with earth heaped on top to protect them from bomb blasts. They were made from 6 corrugated iron sheets bolted together at the top. The end was protected by a steel shield and an earthen blast wall. The 21st of September 1940, the London Underground started to be used as an air raid shelter. On the busiest night in 1940, 177,000 people slept on the platforms. Families, schools, and hospitals were all told to board up windows and doors. No lights were to be visible from the air. The blackout was to prevent any enemy aircraft from knowing that there was a town beneath them. The blackout had a huge effect on people's lives, as thousands died in road accidents due to lack of street lighting and dim traffic lights. To help prevent accidents, white shirts were painted on roads and lampposts. People were encouraged to walk facing the traffic, and men were advised to leave their shirt tails hanging out so they could be seen by cars with dimmed headlights. The current Queen, as a young teen, spoke to the children of Britain on national radio just as the evacuation started. This was how the news came to London and many other towns that it was time to have all the children leave the cities. They didn't go willingly. They got issued a letter, and the children were forced to leave. Nearly 2 million children were evacuated from their homes during World War II. They were evacuated to the countryside to escape the bombing. Children had labels put onto them as though they were parcels. They stood at railroad stations not knowing where they were going or if they would be separated from brothers and sisters. They were very scared about being away from their families and never knew if they would see their parents again or return home to the same house that they had once left. They had to adjust to new schools and make new friends. Clemente R. Attlee was a British politician who became Prime Minister in 1945, who was leader of the Labour Party between 1935 through 1955. He claimed that the removal of British children population was a matter of utmost urgency, that without a future generation safe, there would be no future for Britain. The placement of children was not always the family's decision, but at times that made it easier. Placement of children was not always the family's decision, but at times that made it easier, as responsibility for the care of the evacuated children had been delegated to the various state governments and the Commonwealth government. In conjunction with the state child welfare departments, citizens' committees were set up to undertake the general working organization and receptions. The people in charge controlled where people went, and when it was government issuing orders, then more things were thought to occur for the good, and they knew more details of the war and tactical strategies of the enemy forces. The process of moving children was dependent on many things, mostly transportation, and this was dangerous as this was a target zone in the war, and was vital for transporting war supplies, troops, and resources. This was also used as propaganda to make sure women wouldn't try and keep children in the cities or take them back too soon, as it was still so dangerous in many cities. Cities were mostly under attack as they had greater possibility of large numbers of casualties, but they were also main areas of war supply and factories like armories. In some cases, not all children were sent to the countryside to burn, as there wasn't always a guarantee for the safety of all the children. This made the British government ask for the help from neutral possible Allied powers as they need to keep British children safe was a bigger priority of theirs. Therefore, government openly pleaded with the United States to send ships to carry out of the islands some hundreds of thousands of women and children. Although the British currently accept social migration as a possibility is proven by the fact that the parents of some 502,000 children had only asked that they would be shipped either to Canada or the United States. We will see many children moving to the Allied powers' native lands. With many movements, children are not wanted to move from their own roots. Use the process of information spreading. The children themselves are told what tell the entire truth at last. This is no parody book by having and talking about this important person. The apparent tension facility to methods used, which frequently tell children to lie about how they arrived. Many allies to help, and many worried parents make sure the future generations are safe. The women there to help many left from Australia and Canada were all natural allies in the war too, as they were all put in safe places. As many children who were not originally living themselves, they received aid from many locations. This included other family, relatives, friends, or just different communities as a whole. You went to school, you had friends, in the garden, you had old friends, but never really was that big castle inside. Around there, surprise events reclaimed, at least memories so vivid and per generation unknown, that I'm sure everyone has some memory linked. Music in the 1930s was big band, and swing music was very popular. One of the most popular things at the time was Royal William, who sang songs like We'll Meet Again, and Nelly's Bluebirds over the wet cliff of Dover. When war broke out, most sporting events were stopped, so children mostly played war games and cards. Before 1945, there was about 55 million tons of food. In the war, the ration food got up to 12 million. Every person was issued with a ration book, and different ones were given to different people. Different clothes were handed out to different selection of people. One was in blue for the children mostly, one was for the green for pregnant women and young children, and buff colored for the regular civilian. Ration stamps became a kind of currency, with each family being issued a ration book. Each stamp authorized a purchase of rationed goods in the quantity and time designated, and the books guaranteed each family its fair share of goods made scarce thanks to the war. This occurred because the government wanted everybody to have a fair share, and that was suitable for their health. It was introduced in the beginning of the 1940s. In the fear of some people hoarding food, and some of the poor people not being able to afford food and prices rose, so it was introduced. So scarce objects were still available to all in the war. For example, sugar. This was a way for everyone to do the same thing. No one really could hide from the devastation, and the people had to be able to keep moving forward. Food rationing was not stopped until 9 years after the war, in July of 1954. When returning home, she was 8 years old, and many things had changed, and many buildings were no longer there. The school that she went to when she was 3 was blown to pieces by the bomb craters and playgrounds. Needless to say, many have evacuated that area, and those homes that were injured are now on the streetcar just like many other people in the UK and celebrate to remember. Thank you to my grandma, Anya, for doing local information, and thank you for listening.